figure this out. And that lady on Zoom, I can never figure out her story. Okay, now I got to hit. No, I'm sorry, that. Okay. But one more thing I have to do. Give me a second. Okay, now I got to hit. See, I don't know why that happens. Okay, there we go. Oh, finally. All right. Now, welcome, nonprofit leaders. If you come in to visit us in this live interview today, please let us know you're here by just typing in, I'm here. I'm Nancy Manning, founder of Austin Nonprofit Meetup and Power Your Mission. And today we have our guest is Elly van Laar. Am I saying your last name correctly?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Founder of Elly van Laar Coaching. Welcome, Elly, and tell us what you do as a coach for nonprofits.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you all for listening. I work mainly with management and CEOs around transforming conflict into collaboration. And sort of that means sometimes I do one-on-one coaching with leaders to help them understand the issues they're struggling with and the solutions that work for them. Sometimes I work with teams around communication and team dynamics. Mm-hmm. And there is also an aspect around self-care because conflict often sort of happens in a context of high stress. And I believe that self-care and self-compassion are actually essential ingredients to be constructive in your conflict resolution, because conflict is all kinds of hormones rush through our system. We can get very agitated. So the better we are at caring for ourselves and calming ourselves down, the more easy we can get to sort of a mental state of being able to speak with kindness and gentleness and listen with empathy.
So I know this isn't what we talked about, but something you just said strikes me as very important, that when we're in conflict, we get that emotional thing happening. And yeah, sometimes it's very hard to get yourself to just take a breath. And I have to admit, I'm not like that. Like, I was a lawyer, and in courtrooms, I would get all, freaked out when the other side would object, and then I'd argue immediately instead of taking the breath. It's hard. Yeah. So that's nice. I think it's wonderful to have an idea of having a coach that could help you. I wish I would have had you back in those days. But anyway, listen, I know that when we talk about nonprofit communications, a lot of times we do talk about external outreach, marketing, that kind of thing. And we don't give as much priority to internal communication sometimes. And as you said, there's often some conflict. So can you explain why understanding behavior helps to find solutions to conflict?
The big thing I believe to understand is that everything we say and do is an attempt to meet universal human needs. And these are needs we share throughout space and time, like respect, love, contribution, meaning, rest. The Romans wanted respect, and we do. The Chinese want acceptance and safety, and people in South Africa want that. People in medieval Italy wanted maybe some fun and play, and the children in Argentina want that. So the more we understand that what we say and what we do is an attempt to meet those human universal needs, the more easy it is to find some shared humanity, understand, oh, I get what it means to one love. Either you are in a happy relationship or you're not, but we all understand what that means. I get what it means to want food and rest. The more easily we can figure out not just our shared humanity, but also which other strategies are available to meet those needs, yours and mine. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. Instead of being stuck in finding strategies that are specific to those human universal needs. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and you raised an important point. You and I are both mediators,
Yeah.
and I remember learning about what's called positional-based bargaining. And what happens is you get so stuck in your position that
Yeah.
you can't see that common ground that you're talking about, common human needs, and that's all we're doing when we're in conflict is trying to get our needs met. And the ability to recognize that that person you're in conflict with also has very similar needs.
Yeah.
I think is real critical for our internal communications.
Yeah.
You also said something about unpleasant feelings can act as a check engine light. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. I would actually say that all feelings can work as a check engine light. Only we often pay more attention to the less pleasant ones because those are the ones that are bothering us. And the way it is, your feelings are a result of your needs being met or unmet, and often also the thoughts we have about the situation and the other person, and sometimes even about ourselves. So when my need for acceptance is met, I might feel content and joyful. And then sort of that check engine light doesn't come on. So we don't need to look at the motor, at the engine. But when our needs are unmet, my need for respect isn't met, I might have feelings of anger and frustration, maybe even resentment. When my need for acceptance isn't met, I might have feelings of shame and guilt. So the feeling, when we understand that feelings are just that, they're not positive or negative feelings, they're just messengers. They are trying to get you to open the hood and look in your engine and see what might need more attention. And and sometimes I think that's why coaches can be very helpful, because sometimes we look at the engine and we have no clue. I don't know what pistons are. I don't even know the American terms. I need a car mechanic to help me look and see, oh, what do you think? Maybe this is loose, or that might need more oil, or whatever it is. Now, of course, we are not an engine, but in a way we have our own inner workings that the more we understand that, the more we can help ourselves and others to figure out what is it that needs attention, so that the feelings that we experience as negative transform into more positive feelings. When we see feelings as bad or as good, but especially when we think they're bad, we might cover up the dashboard. We might smash in the dashboard. We might just yell at the dashboard, pretend it's not there. But that's not going to resolve the issue. Mm-hmm. So the more we can accept that feelings are just that, and that we need just sort of attention and the intention to understand, the more likely it is that we can meet our own needs, and in that situation also the needs of others.
Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Yeah.
When you say, you said pay attention to what you're feeling, what the unmet need, what the need. So I think one of the places in the nonprofit world where the conflict gets really sticky, icky, is between leadership, staff, and board.
Yeah.
And it's an awkward situation to be in, because they're your boss as an executive director on the one hand, but in the nonprofit world, it's true that even those bosses don't truly understand governance versus management, or don't understand fiduciary duties. And how can I say this? So like, when I know so many people that have been in conflict with their boards, and it's such a delicate thing. And typically, or often, what happens is avoidance of the conflict.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think you can only do that for so long before it gets worse. Is that right? I mean,
yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, that even this kind of conflict with this weird, awkward relationship between leadership staff and the board might relate a lot to unmet needs by both parties,
Yeah.
of both parties.
Yeah.
So what are the options that nonprofit leaders can use?
I always say reflect before react. So there is a conflict, which might not even be outspoken. Some conflict is just nonverbal, but you're realizing in your executive position that something doesn't work in your collaboration with the board. The first thing I believe we can do is to first try to understand their position. It's what you're saying, their position, and underneath that, what need might be unmet that shows up in this conflict. And the way to do that is just, I would always say, just first is be quiet and just listen and ask, tell me more. What about that? What is meaningful about that? If that would happen, what would bring that to you or to the organization? The board is often highly committed to the mission of the nonprofit. That's why they're in the first place. So you can just ask and then reflect back. Don't add your own layer. That's sometimes what we do. We add our own interpretation, or we add our own history or our own thoughts about it. No, the more literal often in conflict, to be honest, the better it is. The less things we add or interpretation we add, the easier it is for the other person to say, yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say, or no, that's not what you, or they might even still be blaming, you don't hear me, or you don't understand. Well, just forget about it. Just keep saying, oh, you really want more understanding.
One of our listeners today, Jamie from New York, says that exploring unmet needs will make people feel validated. Such a great tip. And what I agree with Jamie, what I was thinking of when you were just talking about that, is that the leadership staff will often, they kind of know that the board may not have an idea about certain fiduciary duties, and then don't understand when they present it in such a way that they get defensiveness back. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, if you listen, you can hear that unmet need of maybe even respect is the unmet need, that they're not feeling respected. That can go a long way towards validating what is needed by both sides, to be heard, to be respected, all of that stuff. And that's really missing in the nonprofit world, I think. It's probably missing everywhere, but
we can all benefit from some practice in that area. Let me just say that. Yeah, I think we all do. And the thing is, sometimes you do have to start talking first. Then my practice has been, especially if it's a sensitive topic or sensitive interaction, to just share one idea, not all, just one, and then ask, how does that land? Or what did you hear? So then sometimes ends up, you talk maybe for 20 seconds and they talk for 5 minutes. But eventually they'll have enough out of their system and have their needs for understanding and to be heard met, that then they'll be ready to listen to you. I'm not saying you shouldn't talk. I just say, first reflect before react. I'm not saying don't ever talk, because that's not working either.
Yeah. And also another little tip I found is, if you find the other person repeating themselves, it means they're not being heard. So you might have to feed back. You might have to say something like, now, am I hearing you correctly? Is this what you mean?
Exactly.
That kind of thing. Yeah. You know, when I was a kid, I just thought of something. This is so weird. I haven't thought about this in 100 years. My mom was real into, like, this is in California back in the 60s. She was very into New Age stuff and into all kinds of therapies and all kinds of, anyway, she got us involved in something called RDS, which was Revolving Discussion Sequence. And it was how to be in conflict with people, where it forced you into repeating what the person said so so that the person would know that they've been heard.
Yeah.
I mean, just basic, simple stuff. We forget to do
Yeah.
that in conversation.
Yeah, and then cycling back to the beginning, that's why in my one-on-one coach with leaders on their own triggers and their own ability to notice, I'm really triggered, I'm not able to reflect back anymore, so that they can work on that outside of the relationship and be more prepared within the relationship.
And
when
that's,
conflict is high and we are not necessarily in full control of our emotions.
and that brings us back to the self-care you talked about in the beginning. That's absolutely right. Well, listen, we are right at our 15 minutes. And as I said, I'd like to be mindful of our busy nonprofit leaders' time. Elly, I think you're delightful. I love that we have that so much in common. And I love having the reminder about our internal communications being just as critical as our external communications. Listen, for those of you who are listening, thank you for coming, and join us next month in October, which is our volunteer programs and partnerships month. Okay? And thank you, Elly, so much for coming.
You're very welcome. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for talking with me, Nancy. It was a delight.
Okay. See you again. Bye-bye.